We're going to be taking a look at another online web app called Quizizz. Quizizz works very well in terms of formative assessment, very similar to what a Google quiz would work. The big advantage that you have with Quizizz is that you can actually draw on a vast resource bank of questions. So what we're first going to look at is how we just simply create a quiz. So once we go to Quizizz, you will go to the address quizizz.com and you will create your account. Once you've created your account, you can just dive in by creating your first new quiz. The button for this is right at the top. So when we click Create Quiz, first it asks us for the name of our quiz. We are going to make a grade 8 poetry quiz for this example. English is our subject. You can obviously select different subjects, more where you can personalize the subject. And that is not necessarily a very important part. Right, so here we have 5 options of the types of questions that you can use. Multiple choice, checkbox, fill in the blank, poll, or open-ended. Most of what we want to do with quizzes is going to be a multiple choice question. Remember, with fill in the blank, as with any of these quiz tools, you have to be very precise with a question, because if learners are going to misspell the word or they're going to use the incorrect capitalization of the word, the system will read it as incorrect. That's why multiple choice is often the safest bet when we are setting up these self-marking quizzes. Right, so we're going to select a multiple choice question and we will ask the question, who wrote The Road Not Taken? Okay, so we're going to have a few options here. Shakespeare, for example, Milton and Frost. We don't want to necessarily have 4 options, so we can just click delete this option. What is a very useful feature about Quizizz, as you will see here, it actually shows you what it will display like on a mobile device so that you can see what the learner will end up seeing. Before we go on, we have to first select the correct option, in this instance Frost, and we need to set the amount of time that they have to answer this question. The default amount is set to 30 seconds, but it can go all the way up to 15 minutes, which is quite a unique feature for an assessment tool like this. What it means is you can actually set quite difficult questions that a lot of calculations need to first occur before an answer can be given, so that learners don't feel pressured by the time that they have, but rather feel they have enough time to calculate the correct answer. This can work well for more complicated maths, equations, etc. However, you will naturally not be able to see the calculations that they took in order to get to this answer. You can also add different sets of media. So there's an image that you can add, for example. However, you can't have an image and text. You have to choose between the two. And then there's also a maths equation editor that you can open up. That'll take you to an equation editor where you are able to create various maths equations and symbols. Again, a very useful tool that not all of these systems necessarily have included. So it works very well in that sense. Right, we want to remove this option and we're going to save our first question. Who wrote The Road Not Taken? Now, as I said, one of the great features that we have here is we have the option to teleport information. So if we click on teleport, what it will do is it will simply take the name of your quiz and search that in order to find similar sets of questions. Now, in this case, we want to have, for example, The Road Not Taken. We're going to search this instead of what they suggested, and it will give us a whole number of different quizzes that have been set up for The Road Not Taken. So let's say we want to take this question, The Road Not Taken, and we see there's a number of different questions that we can use. If we like a question, we'll read the question, we look at the answers, we can simply click on the add button and it is immediately added to my questions. And now I can click and I select the next one and I add. And this is a very useful thing because it allows us to not actually add an entire set, but to hand pick. So if we want to take questions from this one, we can take 1 or 2 questions here. And in this sense, we can use a vast resource bank of questions and build our own quiz that we prefer. Now that I have my questions included, I can go and edit them exactly the way I would have edited any other question. So let's say, for argument's sake, we don't necessarily want pictures here. We can just click on the edit button and it'll give us all the options. We can just click and remove the image because we want to make sure that it uses a little bit less data by removing images. And I feel that this question is really easy. They should be able to get it in 10 seconds. And then we click save. And the question has been updated. So it becomes very, very easy to build a quiz in next to no time using importing questions like this. Right, so now when we are happy with our quiz, we can say finish quiz. Right, when we finish quiz, all that we need to say is we need to select from which grades this quiz is accessible. So we are making it for the 8th grade, and you need to choose, is it going to be public, visible to everyone, or private, only visible to you? If you make it private, then you're naturally going to share your link. Public means it is discoverable. So a good idea is, or a good way to think of it, if you are drawing from the resource bank, it is just fair if you are going to contribute to the resource bank as well. However, you're perfectly welcome to make it private if you want to. You can add a title image to this, or if you've got a link that you want to use of an image that you've already found on the internet, you can just paste it in there. We're just going to leave this example without a title image. And now we save it. And here we have our quiz ready and set up. This quiz can then be edited at a later stage. And the important part is, how do we now get this quiz to our learners? Now, as we mentioned earlier, there is integration with Google Classroom. So if you have your Google Classroom integrated with Quizizz, you can have it automatically posted to there. However, in my personal experience, I've found it works quite well to just simply share the link in this way. So there's a share button over here. If we click share, and we go to other sharing options, we can copy the URL. And this URL can then be sent to various locations. You can copy and paste this URL into a WhatsApp group that you use for communication. You can put it into a hyperdoc. You can load it into any place that accepts a URL. You can email it to certain people if you want to. Right, we don't want to do that. Now, if you're going to share it, what happens then is people can then access your quiz, and they're not necessarily going to access it in terms of answering it. They will see what I see now. If you want to share it with your learners as a homework assignment, you're going to click Assign Homework, and you are going to select Host Game. So you can choose which day that you want to assign it. You can have a certain time limit by this. They have to complete it by a certain time. Right, I don't have any classrooms set up here, and there's lots of options here. So you can set how many times they are allowed to attempt it. If you only want them to do it once, you can say, you can set it to this way. Just remember, if you're going to limit attempts, they must also have a Quizizz account with which they can log in. So for most part, we will just set it to unlimited, which works quite well. So when they connect, they are just going to be asked, what is your name? They will enter their name. So right now we're going to say host game. When I say host game, it gives me a link, share a link. So I can either share it on a Google Classroom, and that's why we've got our Google Classroom there, or you simply have a link. If you're going to do it live in a classroom, you can ask them to open this address, joinmyquiz.com, and then enter a specific code that you will then have to give to them. The easiest is definitely to just click on the link that you're going to share with them, and then they will be able to access your quiz. So from the learner side, when they access the homework and they click on that link, they will get to a page that looks like this. Unfortunately, because we are using a free version, it will show ads until we use a paid version. Right, so here a learner can decide that if they want to activate music and sound effects, if they want to add memes in between, etc. It's all about making the content more engaging. And then I can just enter my name as I want. Please inform your learners to not use nicknames, use their real names. Otherwise, it's difficult to track what they are doing, right? So if we go to start game, it will take me to my first questions, which will look something like this, right? So start, we're ready to start. Right, So I've activated some sounds and I've activated music to make it a little bit more interesting. So we're going to pick this one. Right, the word diverged means okay, we're just going to quickly select a few options so that we can go through this quickly to give you an illustration of what it would look like on your end of things. Right, so here I've completed it. Last question I've completed. And right, so it often does adds a few elements like this. So let's retry a question I got wrong. Obviously, it doesn't tell me which one I got wrong. So if I remembered, I should be able to know that I got a certain question wrong. We're going to say trodden. And I'm done. I have completed my quiz. I can obviously play again. It'll take me into that whole process. Remember, Quizizz has a lot of gamification built into it as well. All about making it more engaging for the learners. Here it tells me I've got 3 correct, I've got 3 incorrect, and if I scroll, it'll show me where I went wrong and where I actually got it right. One thing that's important about getting it wrong is it doesn't actually show me what the correct answer is. The reason for this, in general, the system is designed for learners to repeat what they are doing. So in other words, they can look at what they got right. The things that are right are in green, in wrong it is in red, which means they can now attempt to answer it again. And if they remember the questions they got wrong, hopefully when they do it a second time round, they'll get it right the next time. Right, so now we are back on the teacher side of things. If we have a look at the reports, remember we went from my quizzes. If you go on the side navigation and click on reports, you will get to the screen that looks like this. We're going to click on the grade 8 poetry. It started 8 minutes ago and it is currently running. It will run obviously until that time when you tell it to stop. If we click on this, it again gives me the details of how to share it with learners. And I can scroll down and I can have a look at how people actually did. So only one person has completed it, Yaku Nikak, it picks up my name as. And what I can now have a look at is I see, okay, so 50% is not great. If I click on the name, it'll tell me the details of what happened with each one. What I can also see, what is concerning, is the fact that the questions were answered so quickly. So the learner was clearly not reading the questions and paying any attention. If there was more than one attempt, it would give me the option of clicking on attempt 1, attempt 2, attempt 3, etc. until they have completed the questions correctly. You can also click here on questions. Questions will show you how the learners are doing in general. In general, there's only been one player. He's answered the first question correctly. Second question has been wrong, etc., etc. So it'll give you a detailed analysis of how the learners are actually faring in your questions, which is a very useful tool to guide your own teaching practice. So overview gives us another visual illustration of what is happening with our entire quiz. Right, so it's a very useful tool to track what is happening with your learners. Now, just to go back to my quizzes again, and we go into the poetry. There are other options here as well. If you don't want to use the assigned homework, I think assigned homework is the one that that you might be most interested in. However, there's also an option where you can share a practice link. If they use a practice link, that means that whatever their answer is not recorded into a report. So you can't track what they are doing, which is also sometimes useful in certain senses. And then play live. This was how Quizizz was originally designed, to be a gamification form of this. In other words, learners can sit with their own devices in a classroom and play live. Will show a leaderboard on the screen and they can track how they are doing compared to their fellow classmates. There's lots of elements that have been built into it that are quite fun. For example, the memes. They've added certain powers into it as well, where if you've answered enough questions correctly, you can use a power up to get bonus points, etc. So this all adds to the engagement level for learners. It's a very good tool to generate formative assessment, to generate more data on how your learners are faring. And I think one of the biggest advantages that you have is you're able to tap into a vast resource bank of questions that have already been set. And if we can contribute to that bank, it will only become an even more powerful tool in the future.